Hello and welcome back. Well, the goal streak for Dawson Mercer ended at 8 games, but he did continue his point streak last night with an assist. And when I talked about him this time last week, he was 37% owned. Now he's at 60%, so his ownership's skyrocketing during the week, and he is still very hot, but since I dedicated an entire slide to him in yesterday's video, we'll give him the cover for this one, and then start talking about the players that you can own under 50% ownership. 3 forwards, 2 defense, 1 goaltender as always, and the bonus at the end, the top risers on the Data Draft player rankings from last week. You don't want to miss that. But as we always do, let's start with the forwards. And there were a couple of really hot forwards this week. It was difficult to narrow them down, but this is one guy that I've come back to a number of times, and that is Jared McCann. 45% owned, center left wing, dual eligible. On the week, 6 points in 4 games, including 4 goals, 2 multi-point games, 17 shots, 4.25 shots per game. An incredible week for Jared McCann, but it's been going further than that. 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points in his last 12 games. So this is not just a brief little blip. He's been continuing this for all intents and purposes for the last month. So he's been very consistently hot. He was a guy that I was talking about in December and into January as one of the hot streak, cold streak kind of players when I did that segment in the weekly videos, because he was consistently getting a ton of chances and finishing on those chances. Goals above expected was really good. Upper echelon, top 5 in the league in goals per 60 at certain points in the year. Currently, a 66 on the Data Draft Player Hub, 97th percentile in goal production. That's the main feature to his file. He's going to get you a ton of goals. He'll get you some shots as well and some power play production. He is on PP2. He's currently listed top line left wing with Beniers and Eberle. So you're getting top line exposure plus power play 2 time. He's the center on the second power play unit, but that unit does include Vince Dunn, who is also red hot, 5 assists in his last 4 games and 2 power play points. So that they're using both power play units, and he's centering the second one, which seems to be slightly more productive right now. Tolvanen has 5 assists in his last 4 games, and he's on that unit as well. So very hot second power play unit for Seattle. And then on top of all that, he doesn't get a lot of hits and blocks, so if you take those out of the equation, he's an 84 on the hub without hits and blocks. So think of that similar to an NHL ranking in terms of what that means. He's 84th percentile when you exclude hits and blocks, so very productive offensively speaking. The only thing is the assists are a little bit low. On the season, 18 assists, 30 goals, 48 points. A shorthanded goal and 2 game winners. So not a ton of game-winning goals, but he does get a couple of those, and he is getting some penalty kill time as well, which factors in that shorthanded goal. So he's been getting it done for quite a while now. He's a guy that should always be on your radar if Seattle has a good week. And this would be one of those weeks. I believe they have 3 games, but nonetheless, he's a consistent streaming option that you can go to regularly for production, especially when it comes to goals. But an excellent week for Jared McCann. Now up next, we have a guy who was moved at the deadline, unlike anybody from Seattle. They didn't make any moves. Ivan Barbashev, center left wing, dual eligible, just like McCann, 35% owned, a little bit more available for you. 5 points in his last 4 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, but 12 hits as well, 3 hits per game in that span. I believe those are all with Vegas, but nonetheless, 2-goal game against Montreal, a 2-assist game against Jersey, but 10 hits in those 2 games is very impressive for Barbashev. If you look at his hub, this is similar to what we were talking about with Zucker in terms of being a goal-scoring hitter. Now, the goals haven't been there on the season, but he's starting to come around a little bit with 2 goals in 4 games since being traded. Now he's on the top line with Jack Eichel and Jonathan Marchessault. He's on power play 2, which does affect his production just a tad. He's not going to be necessarily rocketing up in his power play usage. He could take a little bit of a bump from where he is now, but nonetheless, because he only got 3 power play points on the season, so he's got more than nothing, which is why he's up here. But I could see that going up a little bit higher, but it's not going to rocket to the top because of that second power play usage. But nonetheless, he was a -7 in St. Louis. Coming over to Vegas, that should improve as well. And for the most part, you're getting 2.2 hits per game. That's his main feature, his main party piece. But then you're also getting the exposure to the top line in Vegas. I would expect his goals and assists to come up, his point per game to come up. He's about a half a point per game right now. I could see that getting up to the .75 range. And in order to do that, he would have to exceed that over the next 20 games or so. So he could be a really nice streaming option down the stretch heading into your fantasy playoffs. After the All-Star break, post All-Star break numbers, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points in 12 games. So he's been relatively consistent since the All-Star break. So that is a good factor to add into his file, because he's not just hot right now after the trade. He did get it going a little bit before the trade. But nonetheless, a great week for Ivan Barbashev. Again, he's going to be mainly a hits option, but he's a hits option that gets you top line minutes. And speaking of hits options, let's go to another guy who had a good week in a very small sample size, and that is Tom Wilson. And I'm featuring him here because I don't know why his ownership is so low. He only had 2 games last week, so I get the fact that this is not going to be eye-popping numbers, but 2 goals, 1 assist, 7 shots, 4 hits in those 2 games. The hits are a little low for him, considering that he is 99th percentile and averaging 3.6 hits per game, but 96th percentile in goal production, so right around the same pace as Jared McCann, albeit in a limited sample size. He only has 15 games on the season, but he does have 7 goals, 10 points, 2 power play goals, and a game winner, and then 54 hits in that span as well. So since coming back from injury, he's been really productive offensively. He's been getting an opportunity in the top 6. Obviously, Washington's been selling off a lot of players, but with that comes a little bit more ice time for some of the guys that are still left, and that includes Tom Wilson, who will probably factor in on the power play and in the top 6 at 5-on-5 as well. So this is a really interesting play, and this comes on the back of talking about a guy who was moved at the deadline in Tanner Jeannot. His ownership is 35%. So when you compare the two, because they're very similar, last year they both hit 24 goals and were both above 3.5 hits per game. This year, it's a little bit of a different story when it comes to Wilson versus Jeannot. Both extremely good in hits per game, 99th percentile for each, but then you can see the difference here. Tom Wilson, way better in terms of his goal production. The shots are a little bit better at 2 shots per game, getting some power play time, unlike Tanner Jeannot. So that does add in a little bit of value to Tom Wilson and his file, potentially getting access to that. You're getting a couple more blocks out of Jeannot, but everything else favors Tom Wilson, which is why he's a 71. He's a much more complete player this year than Jeannot is. Now, Jeannot should increase on a lot of his offensive metrics, coming to a much better offensive team in Tampa Bay, but nonetheless, Tom Wilson's still going to get a lot of ice time. He's going to be featured on the power play, unlike Jeannot. So if you're looking for a hits forward that can get you some other category coverage, you're looking for Tom Wilson right now at 44% ownership, albeit it is a small sample size, 15 games, but Tanner Jeannot, 5 goals, 11 assists in 60 games. So the offensive production is not really close at all. So if you're looking for one of those hits guys that covers a bunch of other categories as well, Tom Wilson is still there for most 12-team leagues, 10-team leagues, 8-team leagues, etc. You might not get him in a 14-team league or above, but if he is there and you need hits, this is a really good file to get access to, especially with the goals coming the way that they are right now. But that's it for the forwards. Let's transition to the defenseman of the week, and I don't think I have to tell you who it is. It's Dmitry Orlov. He is 52% rostered, but he was a lot less rostered just a couple hours ago. It's climbing by the minute. So if you have him on your wire, go grab him right now. For whatever reason, he has been rocketing up the charts since being traded to Boston. Now, he went from the 16th best offense in Washington to the 2nd highest scoring team in the league, and it apparently got him very excited. Just for reference, if you look at it this past week, 4 games, 9 points, 2 on the power play, 3 goals, 6 assists. Orlov tied Claude Giroux and Connor McDavid for points this week with 9 points in 4 games. And in that span, McDavid was a -1, while Orlov and Giroux were a +7. So that's really impressive for Giroux, but also impressive for a defenseman in Dmitry Orlov. And we saw this with Gustafsson when he exploded for that 1 week period of time, but he was still relatively fantasy ownable after that. He did dip, 3-4 weeks after that one major week that he had, but nonetheless, you're getting Dmitry Orlov coming to the best team in the NHL, so you're getting exposure that could continue into your fantasy playoffs. On the year, there's nothing really impressive. 28 points in 48 games is not bad. It's above half a point per game. So he is 76th percentile in points, but you're mainly getting what I thought was a hits and blocks defenseman who wasn't necessarily elite in either, but then you're also getting the same amount of assist coverage. He's getting some power play time right now, and that is a key ingredient. Right now, he's top pair with Charlie McAvoy and getting a little bit of power play 2 time. So that is something to, make your ears stand up on end, because this is going to be a guy that you're going to want to pay attention to if he's still available on your roster, or on your waiver wire. This week, he did shoot at 42.9%, so that is definitely not sustainable. But I don't know if that matters, because you have to think of this as a hits and blocks guy who's getting some power play time and some assists and overall point coverage just because of the amount of great players around him and the system he's in, the team he's on, etc. And you can see here, all these are wins: 3-2, 4-3, 7-1, 4-2. They're scoring a ton of goals. They're keeping other teams pretty much in check, and they're winning pretty much every game. Now, his ice time, believe it or not, has taken a dip since coming to Boston, which is to be expected, as he's becoming a third pair or top pair defenseman, but a little bit lesser of a role in general than he would have had if he stayed in Washington, where they don't have John Carlson quarterbacking their power play. Maybe he could have stayed and done that. Rasmus Sandin has come over and done a nice job, but nonetheless, an excellent week for Dmitry Orlov. I figured he was going to be a hits and blocks guy. His offense would bump a little bit, but I did not see this coming. So congratulations to everybody who went out and picked up Dmitry Orlov as soon as he was traded. You guys outsmarted the system, and you're reaping the benefits right now. Up next, we have Shayne Gostisbehere, and he was another guy that was traded, 49% owned. On the week, 5 points in 3 games. 2 goals, 3 assists, 2 power play goals, 4 power play points, and 10 shots. So averaging over 3 shots per game, getting 4 power play points in just 3 games is really going to boost him up. A 1.7 change interval on the Data Draft Player Hub. On the year, 35 points in 54 games is not bad at all. 14 power play points is the main reason you used to own him. But now, obviously, he's coming over to Carolina. Now, when he was in Arizona, he was on the 28th ranked offensive team in the league. Now comes to Carolina, and they're 10th best in goals for. So he's potentially going to get a bump in his assists and overall point coverage if he can get access to those elite players in Carolina, the Ahos, the Svechnikovs, and whatnot. Right now, he is currently listed as third pair, but he's getting PP2 time. And that power play 2 features Teravainen, Kotkaniemi, Seth Jarvis, and Stastny. So he's come over to that unit, and I wondered if they were going to give him the PP1 time or if they were going to try to separate Burns and Gostisbehere, and that's what they've done. So now they have Burns on the top unit, they've got Gostisbehere bumping up their second unit, and so now they've got 2 very good power play units that they can go to, and that seems to be the trend after the deadline. The Rangers trying to do that, Carolina combating that with their own 2 power play units specialties. So this is what you're getting access to, mainly a power play producer, but he's also really good in all these offensive categories, just doesn't hit a ton. The blocks are pretty decent. The hits, 0.68, you're not getting a lot of hits out of him, but everything else is really consistent, about 70 to 80th percentile in every offensive category. Now, in October, when he was red hot, 8 points in 8 games. In November, 6 points in 12 games, so a little bit of a dip. December, back up 12 points in 15 games, and then he fell off in January, didn't play much in February due to injury, and in March, he's got 4 points in 2 games since being traded. So hopefully, now that he's healthy, now that he's in a better situation, or at least a more competitive team, that will hopefully bode well for him going forward. If you grabbed him when he was traded, then you reap the benefits of this excellent week on the back end. And this is not crazy minutes. This is 16, 17 minutes a game. So he's not going to be a workhorse out there that's playing 23, 24 minutes. Keep that in mind if you're looking for an ad. But a 71 on the hits and blocks rating is really good for a streaming option. And he is available probably in 8-team, 10-team leagues and some 12-team leagues. So if he is there, I definitely recommend going out and picking him up. But a good week from Gostisbehere nonetheless. That brings us to our goalie of the week, and it is none other than Philipp Grubauer. I've been waiting for this since the preseason because he typically every year he was above a .920 save percentage every year that he's been in the NHL, and then last year he was the statistically worst goaltender in the league. So it didn't make any sense. This year, he just hasn't found that save percentage back to where he was previously with Colorado, previously with Washington. But in the last week, it seems like he found it. You can see here a 941, a 913, and another 913. 3 wins in 3 games, 186 goals against, 921 save percentage. On the year, about 500, 11, 11, and 3. 2.96 goals against means that he's got a good team in front of him, which he does, 58th percentile team exposure. 895 save percentage isn't great, which is why he's 27th here. The goal saved above expected isn't great because, again, it's taken him a while to find his game, but he is stealing the net from Martin Jones, as I mentioned in yesterday's video. Jones, 1 win in his last 4, and 846 save percentage, so Grubauer has taken that and run with it. He's got a 5.5 point improvement on the goalie hub from last week, the second highest improvement of the week behind just Sergei Bobrovsky. So he's coming, and he's one of those guys that's down the stretch supposedly taking over the net, and he's going to be, if not the starter, the 1A going forward. So if you're in a battle trying to get into your fantasy playoffs and you need a goalie, he would be one of the guys I would look to because he seems to get a lot of the workload in this past week. Last night, I was watching this game in Colorado. They were down 2-1 with 3 minutes left. I thought it was over, but then they come back and they win it. So that definitely helps having the team in front of him to be able to score their way out of some of these problems. Typically, up until the past week or so, Seattle scored almost 4 goals per game for Martin Jones, but under 3 goals per game for Philipp Grubauer. So if they can switch that and score a little bit more for Grubauer, which they seem to do this week, 5-4, 4-2, 3-2, that will bode well for him getting more wins, and he's starting to get more starts. So I could see this rating continuing to climb over the next couple weeks. So if you do need that goaltender, he's only 32% owned. He might be there for you even in a 14-team league. Definitely there for you in a 12-team or a 10-team league, depending on how astute some of your fantasy managers are. But at this point in the season, the guys at the bottom of your league are probably not paying attention, so there's less competition on the waiver wire to pick these guys up. I would definitely run out and try to grab Philipp Grubauer if you can. And that brings us to the bonus, the top risers on the Data Draft Player Hub. This is a little practice that I've been doing over the past couple weeks. The guys that are changing the most are not necessarily the best owns, because that means they were lower ranked and they've just had a really good week. Because of a small sample size, they bump up a lot. But some of the guys in yellow are in that range where they're really good streaming options. Anywhere near a 70 on the Hits and Blocks Hub is a good streaming option in a 12-team league. Dmitry Orlov, obviously an incredible week. He bumped up 6 points. Tom Wilson, we talked about him. He's been up 3.2 points. And then Eli Tolvanen, 71 on the hub, 3.2 point bump this week. And if you're looking at him, obviously the goals is what you're looking for most out of anything. 1.5 hits per game is a little bit surprising. That is nice to add to his file. Not known for being a hitter, but he's starting to throw the body around a little bit. Blocks are okay. Power play usage is pretty good. He had 5 power play assists this week, so that second unit is starting to figure it out, as I mentioned with McCann. Then you're getting a little bit of shot volume, but not enough. I would expect this to be a little bit higher. He's a guy who can score goals. I would hope that he shoots a little bit more, but nonetheless, a pretty good week for Eli Tolvanen. I don't know if it's Eli, whatever. But yeah, he's, I believe, under 30% ownership. I'd have to double check on that, but he's still probably available for you in a lot of league formats. And he had a great week, but it was very assist heavy. So I would expect some goals to start coming because he is 85th percentile in goal coverage. But that's going to do it for this video. Remember to like, subscribe, scan the QR code you're seeing right now on your screen to access the player and goalie hubs and other tools for your fantasy playoffs coming up. And getting access to our elite fantasy Discord group could make or break your fantasy season at this point. If you're heading into the playoffs, if you're trying to make the playoffs, you definitely want a group of elite fantasy managers to help you with start and sit options, waiver pickups, schedule optimization, things like that. So you can scan the QR code and get access to our Discord group. Remember to set your lineups, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.